it going, everyone? It's Levi and this person. So this week's topic is talking about trans and non-binary people of color. Obviously, I'm not a person of color, so I don't have a lot of authority to say much on the topic. So I guess I'm just going to talk about what white people can do to be a good ally and to help our trans friends. And yeah, right?
Yes.
What can I, as a white person, do? I think that's something that people have to ask themselves, especially in the trans community. A lot of like the famous trans guys like on YouTube are white, so I think people think that they speak for all trans guys, when obviously that's not true, because everybody has their own means of transitioning. Everybody transitions differently, but also not every trans guy is white, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of problematic that a lot of the icons or whatever are white. I don't know, I don't think it's inclusive for our trans brothers who are, you know, not white.
I'm not trans, but I feel like I can speak as a person of color. I feel like it's important to kind of address that on its own in order to understand how to be a good ally for a non-binary trans person of color within the community, if that makes sense. Like, you have to almost separate the two in order to see them as a whole, I feel like.
Separate.
Like, you have to separate, because this is like
you have to be a good white ally
in general
before you're like a white trans ally.
Exactly. Like, I feel like for both of the things you have to kind of be understanding for both of the things and then conjoin them together. Like how Levi was saying, like, it's a very different thing to be a white trans guy or a white trans woman as opposed to being a person of color that is also trans. We were talking about it earlier, and it's just like, it's a lot of otherness, for lack of a better word, that person has to go through. Like, being a person of color in its own is incredibly hindering as far as the way people look at you. Like, there's lots of discrimination that you go through almost on a daily basis depending on where you live. And so you kind of just have to understand that your non-binary brothers and sisters that are also of color have to deal with loads and loads of discrimination, possibly on a daily basis. So the best thing that you can do is, if there's an issue, if you don't know what it's like, just don't say anything, let them speak, and just kind of support them in what they're going through, basically. Right. Because it's just a completely, I can't imagine, but as a person of color I do understand what that's like. So having to know like what Levi goes through, being misgendered on a daily, you know, possibly, I don't know if he experiences getting looks or people saying, oh, well, what's it like having been a woman, or all that kind of crap that, you know, trans people have to go through. Imagine that on top of racism, you know? You just have to be there with them in solidarity, and like Levi was saying, just silence and just listen to them, let them voice what they're going through, and just support them best you can, I guess.
Use your privilege to like put them up.
Exactly.
To like give them the attention.
Exactly.
Like, use your privilege to get all the other white people to focus on these people who don't have as much privilege and who don't get as much recognition.
There's no shade in this by saying this, but I felt like, and I didn't even really realize this at first when Caitlyn Jenner came out, how huge of a thing it was. And fucking good, like, it needed to have been a good thing, and it brought a lot of awareness, but I feel like it's almost a misrepresentation of people of color that are trans. Like, it kind of overshadowed Laverne Cox, who I feel like is an incredible role model really for anyone who's trans, but she has had to go through a shit ton more being a black woman that is also trans, and then I feel like it kind of just overshadowed it a little bit. So I mean, just know that there are people of color that are going through this too, and that their voices really could tell you so much more.
I think there needs to be more advocates for trans people of color, especially on YouTube. I feel like
absolutely
a lot of it's just these white guys who get all this fame and attention because they're white,
right?
Because they have, you know,
yeah, and
it's just sad.
It is sad because I feel like there's just in general there aren't enough colored voices to sort of shed a different sort of light on what it's like to be a trans person.
Right.
So it's kind of giving a skewed perspective of what it's like. I'm glad on this channel though there are people of color, and that's helpful. Like, yeah, those guys definitely will be able to give anyone who's watching this like a bigger view on how things are.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just be not open-minded, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess open-minded, just like listen.
Be a sponge.
Be a sponge, take in everything that they have to say. Because while, you're going through like transition processes, the transitions can be completely different. Yeah. So I think...
Yeah, and just like what you were saying, like for a white guy who is passing, you are pretty much entering into one of the groups by a lot of people who are looking in on you and don't know that you're a trans person. You're entering into one of the groups that is like the most powerful in the world.
You're the most privileged in the world.
Exactly. And then even for a passing person of color, say a black man, a black trans man, he's entering into one of the most discriminated against groups in the world, right? Like, it's even more dangerous for him. I mean, I feel like it's just think about your privilege, basically. Like what Levi was saying, it's very important to keep that in mind. No matter everything else aside, keep in mind your privilege. Yeah.
Yes. Personal updates. So I'm done with therapy, gender therapy. I'm like in the process of finding a doctor and getting my referral. So,
yeah, we're leaving to the Dominican Republic soon, and hopefully he will be able to start hormone therapy beforehand, so it'll be easier for him while he's there.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
You smell good. He smells good.
Got some new deodorant. Have a good week. Have a good life. Tell your loved ones that you love them. I love you.
I love you.
Gosh. Okay, keep it real.
Bye.